ICFRC hosts community programs to address topics of international interest. We thank our members, volunteers, and interns for making these forums possible since the year 1983, which is the same year that the game Jenga was introduced at the London Toy Fair. As a reminder, we are in a new academic year, and if you've not already renewed your ICFRC membership, please do so at the back of the room at the registration desk. Before we begin, let me acknowledge our university and community supporters: the University of Iowa's International Programs, the University of Iowa's Honors Program, the University of Iowa Center for Public Policy, and the Stanley UI Foundation Support Organization for their financial support. Also, I want to thank today's special sponsors: Joe Wegman, Dave, Denise, and Mike Tiffany, and Karen and Wally Chapel. Thank you as well to City Channel 4 for professionally recording our programs for cablecast on City Channel 4 or 118-2, and to the UI Library's digital archives. Over 200 ICFRC podcasts are now can now be found on iTunes as well. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Peter Chanthanakone. Peter is an award-winning director and producer specializing in 3D animated short films. He has won numerous film festival awards, and his works have been selected in major film festivals around the world as a retrospective at the 2013 View Animation Video Festival and on a giant screen in Times Square in the New York City International Film Festival. His work has been selected in over 65 international juried competitions. He is also a jury member for the prestigious Electronic Theater for Siggraph Asia and director and producer at RiFF Animation Studio in Bangkok, Thailand. Excuse me. Peter is a perennial international speaker with talks at Siggraph Asia, Seoul International Cartoon and Animation Festival, Asia Animation Forum, the International Symposium of Electronic Arts in Dubai and Hong Kong, and the Society of Animation Studies in Toronto, London, and Singapore. He has given visiting artist talks at the world's top animation schools, such as Sheridan College, Nanyang Technological University in Singapore, and the University of Sao Paulo. Please join me in welcoming Peter Chanthanakone.
My name is Peter Chanthanakone. Again, thank you for the introduction. And let's get moving here. So these are the things that I'll be speaking about the next 30, 40 minutes. There's 3 most commonly asked questions, as you can see here, and then I'll talk about some of my work in the animation pipeline to get us a little familiar with that. Hopefully most of you are done eating, but I thought it was really funny. This is my nephew, and his shirt says, "I'm just here for the pizza." So again, thank you all for coming. The food was delicious. So the 3 questions that people always ask me is, are you a grad student, or are you in your 4th year? And this always comes up, even with that first slide. Second question, and I'll show you the answer here. And so that's how you say my last name, Chanthanakone. So that's another question that always comes up. The third one is, where's Iowa? But we all are here in Iowa, so I'll exclude that. So I'm from Canada, and I was born not under this waterfall, but this is Niagara Falls, which is just 15 minutes away from my parents' home. I went to grad school in San Francisco, and this is me trying to be cool. Back then, we used flip phones, so it was a while ago. I love to take photographs, partly because of the inspiration that it gives me. And essentially, that's what this talk is about. And so here's just a handful of photographs over the past 12 years. And I'm sure you know some of these places. This is in Iceland. This as well. So that's a little bit about me. And let's talk about animation. So here is a graph that shows how long it takes for me to make one animated short film. An animated short film roughly ranges between 3 to 6 minutes long. And since 2006 till now with Dance Universe. You can see the number of hours ranging from 1,200, 2,300 to now I'm getting it down to just under 500 hours to produce animation. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And here's the pipeline. So this is why it takes so long, because it requires a number of skills and talents. So at a typical studio, like I saw, I think, a questionnaire about Disney and Pixar, their production studio has anywhere between 300 to 500 people. So if you were to break that down into these black rectangles, you could have up to 100 in each of those areas. Then when you break it down further, you have those smaller boxes. And it's a little hard to read, but the very top one is pre-production, which is essentially everything without a computer. So script writing, drawing, storyboards. Then we have asset creation, which is then taking those drawings and then digitizing them, more or less. It's a much more complicated process than that. The third one is the shot making process, where you're taking those storyboards and the animatics, which hopefully you're getting some of this, and it's animated through the computer. And then finally is the rendering. And rendering takes a very, very long time. So for example, Toy Story 1, if it was to be rendered on one computer, it would take 27 years. So just to give you an idea of that. And I'll talk more about rendering because it's very painful. The software, which comes up all the time as well. So I use mostly Autodesk as well as the Adobe Master Suite. I don't compose the music for the shorts. I have wonderful artists that I collaborate with to do those. So with animation, you see it everywhere, and I thought this would be interesting to talk about the future of things. And so here we have a graph of where things are going with video games, and you can see that it had surpassed movies a long time ago. So for the predictions, and by 2020, they're expecting about $90 billion for the video game industry, whereas the movie industry is sitting around $30 billion. So you can see that it's 3 times as large. So there's lots and lots of potential with animation. During the introduction, it was mentioned that yes, I do teach in the School of Art and Art History, and this is the building. And before I forget, we do have our faculty biennial, so just a quick shout out for that. It's this Friday, the opening, at 5 to 7:30, and I help put that together. So please come on by. And so this Friday, the opening. And just to give you a little bit of insight, this is what it looks like in my office. And a lot of students don't come during my office hours, but I've converted the bookshelves and put toys there instead. So with animation, I know this is probably a very different talk than what you're probably expecting or have been getting. I don't read so much, so it's very different because we are visual artists. But anyways, back to myself and some of my passions. I started traveling in 2006, and this is just a few little travel logs over the summers. I just was able to pull these off from my computer because they were already made. So this is 2011, and you can kind of get an idea of what I usually do in the summers for 3 months. 2015, see the arrows, and they're just kind of all over the place. 2016. This was a little bit more. This was 3. If you include North America, it's 4 continents, one summer. And then this is just recently. It's really, really nice to not have jet lag. I think that's really one of the benefits when you travel a lot, that you can overcome it. Red Bull has been my solution. So anyways, 9 countries this summer. It was really great, and it's really fun to be able to represent University of Iowa. So this was an example of just some of the workshops and lectures just in the universities. So this is in Nara Institute of Science and Technology in Japan earlier this year, which was really wonderful to talk to their students. In Bangkok, Thailand, and Chulalongkorn University, also wonderful. And then I just thought this was a trip just to see the statue next to me as I was talking about one of the pieces in Austria. But anyways, it's really been a great blessing to be able to visit these places. And this is where I get my inspiration when I talk about locations and places and how they influence my work. So now let's talk about the work. And so if we look at other examples out there, here's Spirited Away by Miyazaki. And he was inspired by the location on the right, which is, I'm going to butcher this name because every time when I was in Taiwan, I was like, I want to go to this place. And like, what are you saying? I don't know idea what you're saying. So don't use my pronunciation as an example, but it's Juifen. Yeah, people are laughing already. Then we've got Big Hero 6, which was directed by one of our alumni, Don Hall, and that's with Disney. And that was inspired by Tokyo and San Francisco. And so here's a screenshot of the environment in that film. And so, excuse me. So in a lot of ways, in order for my imagination to really come out, it's really dependent on the places that I have access to. And with planes, you can go everywhere. Eventually, I want to go to Antarctica, but apparently it takes like 20 hours by boat, and it's really horrible tides and waves and stuff like that. So I'm going to show you some examples of some of my work and the backgrounds and locations of some of these places as I was imagining them. I'm just going to leave this one up for a second just for you to see it, because I think it's a good introduction to to this film, which was my thesis project in 2016. And so it's just a snippet of the film. I know we have problems with audio, but visually, hopefully you can see everything. Okay, so I'm going to just continue on from here. These videos, most of them are online, so you can view them there as well. And so you saw in the very beginning that there was a skyline. And when I was doing my research, this is again in 2006, living in San Francisco, there was a skyline there too. But I was really impressed with the skyline I'm struggling here for a second. Okay, in Hong Kong. I was so impressed by Hong Kong skyline that years later I would go and visit. So in some way it's a little bit in reverse going, but I'll show a few images of the place. I'm gonna wrestle with this thing. Okay, I think we're okay now. And there's a wonderful trick that a friend told me. You can pay for the public boat, and it runs, I think, every 15 minutes, and it's only $1. You can go across the water, and it's a great way to see the skyline from both directions of Hong Kong. So from there, my next film was given, the script was given from a colleague of mine, David Hayes, and he's a short film writer. And it's basically about a story of a boy who has to become a man, so a coming-of-age story. And I tried to imagine a place that this could take place. And my trip to France, I think, really helped me discover this location, which it takes place. And it's a short snippet as well, but just to show you some of the background and the research to come up with some of the things in the film in terms of the feeling of some of these places. I went to visit as many churches as I could, gathering, again, the sense of the feeling, because they are mostly made of stone, and they feel quite cold, almost like being in a cave. And they're very weathered because of the dampness of these locations. They're also very intricate in terms of the work behind it, and that became great a resource for me to be able to pull textures from the photographs, pull those textures from those images and put them into the 3D animated short. So you can see the tiles. I pulled the tiles from the grounds of some of these churches, pulled them into the environments in the short film. Some of the stained glass windows, also pulled them in. I apologize if I'm going too fast, but I have about 100 and I have 300 slides. I'm just joking. I have 100 to go through. A lot of people don't really think about what it takes to make an animated short because everything has to be generated. And when something's generated, it's new. So to create it in a way that has been used is incredibly difficult. So I ended up using this texture on the walls. And then here's the short clip. You know, one of the really nice things, I'll show the next slide because it may pique your curiosity, but one of the nice things as an independent animator is that you can make anything you want, right? You're not required to follow any investors or any producer that says you got to do this way because this is what's trendy. You can do whatever it's on your mind. So a lot of the times there's all sorts of little secret messages in my shorts that a lot of people, well, some people get it and some people just see it on the surface. But I'll kind of leave it like that. My next project I thought would be really interesting is to question our use of energy and what happens when energy is gone. There was a power outage back in Canada. I think it was 2003. I'm not sure if you remember that or if it would have affected this area, but it affected a lot of Toronto, Canada, Niagara, New York. And we had this power outage. I remember just playing video games, just on my laptop. It had its own, internal battery pack, and I was just playing, thinking that the power would come back, but it never did. It took us about 2 days before it did. And I remember Costco was handing out ice cream because they were just going to throw everything away. And so that really stayed in my mind. And 10 years later, I would make this one about an amusement theme park that was no longer used, just vacant, and how we value things for that. And so it was really fun. I know it's interesting to be able to say that I'm going to a theme park for research, but I went to Disney World for 3 days, and I looked at these environments, and I tried to recreate it in animation. This is the project that took 2,300 hours. It took 3 years to make, because when you have to generate all the assets and that of a theme park, it's quite extensive. And so there's about 300 or 400 textures to make individual signs, and a number of characters, and about 8 different environments. They would crash my computer because these environments are so large. So I had to think of different ways to render it. And so here's a short clip from this as well. And so this is Junkbox from 2012. A few different Easter eggs in this short film, and you end up seeing more of it, is my influence on my visits to Laos. And so he lives in this shack, and every time I go to Laos, it's not necessarily a very clear representation of what Laos is, but if you just drive out into the rural areas, you will see things like this. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but I thought this was fascinating. There's a light bulb at the very end of the stick, and at nighttime it lights up, and the bugs will be attracted to it, and then they end up falling in the water, and which becomes food for the fish. So yeah, now everyone can copy that in their own little fish ponds. And some of the houses that are around the area, I'm just so amazed and just so attracted actually to clutter. Not to say that my car or my house is cluttered, but I just love the idea of this rawness that is visible. Fast forward, and like I said, I travel quite a bit, and so I'm going to talk over this one. This is Touch Free 2013, a little bit more playful, but really is the idea of questioning about technology and really how it ends up benefiting us or not. And like I said, I end up spending a lot of time in airports and a lot of time in airport bathrooms because of that. I mean, and you have these sensor-based, right, faucets, and I think now they're better, but there's times when it didn't work, and I started to question whether it was real. You know, you ever get like that, where you're like, why is this not? If I died, and just, you know, and these deep thoughts start coming, or something so simple. So I ended up creating a short based on that, and doing a lot of research from different airport bathrooms. I was that creepy guy. I had my sunglasses on with a hat, and I'm just walking to the bathrooms. I mean, of course, there's no people in there. And that was my inspiration to make those bathrooms, because it's in outer space. It's intergalactic. So, you know, how our bathroom is going to look 300 years from now. I don't know why I'm showing pictures of food, but I think because we had food. I'll show a couple of these images to introduce Laos and the next 2 short films. I love the food there. It's really amazing. and I love the texture that it offers. It is one of the fastest growing countries in the world now, but still one of the poorest. It has very beautiful natural landscape, mountains, limestone cliffs, the Mekong River. This is not the Mekong River. It was heavily influenced by the French. And so the reason why I'm showing this is because in the film that you're about to see, a lot of elements that I took from Laos, I mashed them up because I'm born in Canada, so I'm going to have certain aspects of design that are both Laotian and Canadian. My parents love going there, and every time I go there for research, they come and find me. So it's my parents. And this is their number one mode of transportation is a tuk-tuk, which seems like a lot of fun because it's open air. You're in a little convertible, but there's so much dust. And me and my dad get sick. I don't know why he doesn't have one on. But we get really sick after even being on for half an hour. And of course, we have to visit relatives too. So this is my grandfather. And I thought it was really funny that he's just so cool and hip with 2 different colored sandals. And that's where I get my style from, I guess. So beautiful, beautiful landscapes. It's really, really untouched. Very, very raw. This is me on the back of my cousin's motorbike. You can buy bananas, and maybe you can buy that cat too. I love the markets there, again, for just that rawness. And most of you have finished eating, I think, right? Because this next one I think is interesting. So the food is very fresh. It's that day. And there's flies on it because they assume you're going to cook it, right? And of course, because of the poverty you see stuff like this, and I try to capture some of these moments just to remember and stay humble. So again, a lot of beautiful, beautiful waterfalls and natural places. It's really untouched still, and it's an adventure if you were to go there because they don't speak English so much. It's very, very rare. And as I go through some of these rural towns, I thought this was really funny. It's just a bunch of kids and like a 10-year-old pushing this tractor. I'm not sure where they're going, but it looks like a lot of fun. I ended up jumping in with them, and they were incredibly shocked because of my weight. I really slowed down the tractor, and then they took it to their dad's house, and I met the dad, and it's like, hey, what's up? Picked up a random person. All right, so this next short, it's very short. I've been focusing a little bit on micro shorts, so short films of 1 minute or less. Okay, so here we go. So I'm not sure if you could read that, but there are, try to pull that slide back, or maybe I can't. But there are about 80 million landmines still in Laos, and half of the victims that, somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000 still get affected by them, and half of them are children. So I thought it was kind of interesting, right, to use animation and kind of draw an audience in, and then just hit them with that, because I think that can, leave an interesting impact. So this next one is also quite a short one, and it's a little bit of a hybrid, but it's a childhood story. from one of the workshops of the students that I did with in Laos, and I try to go there as much as I can to try to have a, do some creative work with them and inspire them in some ways. And is this time right on the laptop, or does anyone know? Okay, thanks.
ผ่านมาเวลาหลายปีตั้งแต่ตอนค่อยเป็นเด็กน้อยอยู่ไปลิ้นแถวสุนบทน้ำหมูตอนนั้นก็แม่นไปโรงเรียนพ่อหมู่หันแล้วมีมือหนึ่งมาค่อยตื่นสวยค่อยลืมใกล้สิฮอดโมงเข้าโรงเรียนค่อยก็เลยแล่นออกไปนอกแล่นไปโรงเรียนด่วนๆย่านอาจารย์จานให้แต่วันนี้เห็นตุ๊กขี่กายก็เลยคิดว่าแต่ละเทือก็เห็นหมู่แลนโดดขึ้นตุ๊กและบ่เห็นโดดลงแล้วก็ไปไวก่อนเฮาก็เลยคิดว่าสิโดดขึ้นตุ๊กนำเป็นเทือทมิตของเฮาแหละตะกี้ก็บ่เคยโดดแลนนำตุ๊กแลนโดดขึ้นตุ๊กใกล้สิฮอดโรงเรียนหั่นเคยเห็นค่อยก็บ่กล้าโดดลงบัดนี้ค่อยคาอยู่ตุ๊กและขี่กายโรงเรียนค่อยก็เริ่มบ่มีทางเลือกละตุ๊กก็เริ่มบ่พรความไวค่อยก็สิตุ๊กก็บ่คือละค่อยลักขึ้นค่อยก็ต้องได้โดดลงวันนี้ตอนค่อยโดดลงค่อยบาดเจ็บน้อยนึงแต่นั่นมาก็เป็นบทเรียนที่ว่าคันลักเฮ็ดนี่หยังส่วนใหญ่ผลออกมาจะบ่ค่อยดี
So animation does have innate qualities for telling stories of morals, and so you can see from this example how when you try to do something, sometimes the outcome it may not be what you want in that example. So I apologize if you couldn't read the text. It was very small, but hopefully you were able to still gather the essence of the story. And so you said it was 12:52. Okay, so 8 minutes. All right, here we go. From there, I use this example, and it's an empty parking lot, but every time I go to Walmart, it's full. And then I mashed it up with my experiences in Italy, and I came up with this short film called Parking Gods. And I'll just play a short clip of it, and I'll continue. But at least you can get an idea of how I came up with this environment and the design of the cars and the design of the trees and so on. So the main story is really about this gentleman trying to find a parking spot, and that's 3 minutes of that. So maybe I'll just let it play for another 20 or 30 seconds. And I was inspired also from my visit to my grandfather. He wanted to take me to a buffet restaurant for dinner, and it's probably the scariest drive of my life. I thought we were going to die. So from there, I started to use different types of technologies. Here is motion capture. And so we're taking live dancers, and we take that data and put it onto characters. And so I did a lot of testing. So you can see the environments too. This is from Dubai. Testing the trees, that didn't really work out. Yeah, it's getting interesting now, right? But the process that I'm using for creating some of the environments is called photogrammetry. So you take at least 20 photographs around an object, and museums are a great place to shoot because there's not that many people. So here's a few images, and you can imagine these environments, right? You mash them together. So here we have an alleyway in Ann Arbor, Michigan, over a museum exhibition space in Cleveland, Ohio, all in the same location. So here's more clips of the dancers that took part in it. And I'll play just a short clip. And this will be playing on Friday. I wish I could fast forward a little bit. But there's all different types of environments that are in this 4-minute animated short that's called Dance Universe. So with some of this research and animation, I've been lucky enough to mix it up a little bit. And here's just a short clip of a VJ animation set. So I'll be performing at the Mill Wednesday, October 3rd with Bruce. He's one of the resident DJs there, and where you use the animation and you synchronize it with the music, and you create this audiovisual experience. And so that's Wednesday, October 3rd. I don't know what time it is, but it's probably pretty late. But since then, I've been doing some other things. This is Space Junk. I'll let this play while I talk over it. And this is a short that we're going to probably move. It's either not going to play. Oh, it's moving. It's a virtual reality, so it's really hard to see. But it's actually left and right eyes. So when you wear the headset, it'll make more sense. And you can look all around in 360 degrees. But I just thought it'd be interesting to imagine in a universe where Earth no longer exists, and what kind of stuff we leave behind, and the legacies and what we value. So there's all sorts of antiquities in this piece from visiting some of these museums in Egypt and in Italy and some of these other significant places. And so I'm almost done. What is this? So I'm finishing up this project as well. Hopefully by next year it'll be done, and I'm talking over it, but it's using Bangkok as our backdrop and putting 3D generated characters over top of it. And so we're seeing Bangkok in their perspective and these miniature characters as they explore through the very colorful circus-like-ness of Bangkok. And I'm in the early stages of this short. The title is still work in progress, but I'm going to also butcher this. It's the Akigahara National Forest, just outside Tokyo, Japan. And we want to put augmented reality glasses like this, and people would walk through that forest because it's over here. We know it as the suicide forest, and putting figures into that space, kind of like the Sixth Sense, but you're walking through that space, and you interact with the apparitions. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope you found this interesting.
Okay, this question is there a future for simple 2D unshaded animated stories? I'll just leave that there.
Yes, I think there is. And so if you go to animated film festivals, you see it everywhere. But in terms of commercial, maybe TV series, but outside of that, I think it's going to be pretty tough. So independent short film festivals, you'll still see that, and it's almost anti-3D in a lot of ways. So, yes.
Okay. This question is about you. How many languages do you speak as you're traveling around?
Not many. Usually I'll learn how to say thank you and hello in those countries, and then after I leave, 2 or 3 days later, I forget exactly what I even remembered. So, but I can speak Lao, English, a bit of French. Being born in Canada, we have to learn French, and then my Thai is getting there, but might need some more work. So maybe 2.78 languages.
Okay, we'll end with a question that I had while I was listening to you. Are there any differences between how Americans see things and the kinds of animation that they create versus other cultures in the world, like Japanese or something? So could you speak to that?
Yes, Karen, that's a great question. There's a big difference in the way animation is both produced and the ideas that come out from different areas. I would say the biggest are USA and Japan, and they're very different in that Japanese animation, because more people watch it and they have so many different types of audiences that watch it, you end up having a lot of different types of genres. So you have anywhere between a 5-year-old watching an animation, and then you also have a 60 or 70 or 80-year-old watching animation. It's different topics, but it's very open. Where in North America, and I think a lot of countries are trying to emulate what Walt Disney did, because there's not only their ideas, but their style of animation is very different. In Japan, they still would rather see what is I call it limited animation, where it's 2D and it's more about the dialogue, whereas in North America, it's more heavily character driven. So you see the characters moving and using more pantomime to exhibit their emotions and tell the story. And because of what Disney did in the 30s with the 12 principles of animation, you have a lot of very unique and these principles are seen across any sort of animation production in North America. And then also it's trickled over to a lot of Asia and South America. So hopefully that answered that question.
Thank you. So we now conclude our program, and I want to give Peter a thank you for his presentation. And I also want to thank again our sponsors, the University of Iowa's International Programs, the University of Iowa's Honors Program, the University of Iowa Public Policy Center, and the Stanley UI Foundation Support Organization. And also our special sponsors for today, Joe Wegman, Dave Denise, and Mike Tiffany, and Karen and Wally Chappell. So Peter, as a small token of our appreciation, and this is the fun part, I would like to present you with the coveted Iowa City Foreign Relations Council mug.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's great. Thank you.
So thank you for joining us. We are adjourned.